So, hello, Stephanie and I are back again. Thank you to all of those of you who watched our previous video. We had quite a few nice comments, didn't we, Steph? So, we're back, and today we're going to discuss the theme of teacher exhaustion. And we're going to look at why we end up there and what we can do about it. And we've kind of come up with a few main things that we think are themes, are part of us as teachers, and that basically get us to being exhausted. Um, and yeah, we're going to discuss what we can do about it. So, Steph, do you want to introduce the first theme?
Yeah, the first theme is a phrase that I would like to get banned from schools and teacher talk, which is the phrase that, well, teaching's a vocation or teaching's a lifestyle. Um, and I definitely probably need to apologize to a few people because I definitely believed and banged on the drum of this phrase for quite a long time. Um, but actually, teaching is a job. It's a great job. It's an important job, and it serves a heck of a lot of people. But that sort of vocation or lifestyle mindset for me absolutely blurs that boundary of, where does the job end and where do I start? And yeah, so that's my first topic, and and why it matters to me. Any initial thoughts for you on that, Emma?
I think yeah, you go into teaching and it becomes you and it becomes your vocation, and you do it because you care and you want the best for the children. And I look back at my first few months, first few years of teaching, and it's like I was so energetic and I was doing so much extra work to make the lessons amazing. And actually, you end up spending so much of your free time doing more and more that you then don't actually have time for anything else. So it's a really difficult one, isn't it? It's where's that line on it's just a job, but it's also a job you're going into that you love and you're passionate about. So you can see how teachers end up in that situation, but it's about finding that line, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we talked about it last time, the Department of Education survey that said, 73% of teachers don't have enough time for their personal life. And for me, it wasn't just about time, it was energy for my
Mm-hmm.
personal life. I didn't look forward to doing things because I was like just so tired, or I was thinking about something that I needed to do, or just wasn't present in conversations with friends and family because you you're on adrenaline. You go in, you go in, you go in, and then you come home and shut the door, and it's just like
Yeah.
I've nothing left to give. And for me, also, that phrase was really um ingrained in me in terms of term time. Your life is school, and that's what the teacher holidays are for actually living a life. And it's like, what a warped way of looking at your life, that for 13 weeks of the year I'm going to live my life. Like, looking back now, that is
Yeah.
literally ridiculous.
Yeah. It's funny because for me, I don't know if you're the same, it did become just like a routine thing. I would say, oh, I can't because because of my job, because I just can't. It The more that you say I can't because, the more stuff you end up missing out on. So it started being, oh, I'm not going to go out on the week evenings. Oh, I can't on the weekend. I've got work to do. And then before you know it, you've not socialized, you've not done anything for 8 weeks because you're waiting for the
Mm.
holiday to then be able to say, oh, I can this week. And then I can't go forward for 8 weeks again. And it kind of becomes that we probably could have, but because you start saying I can't, it spreads and it just becomes normal.
Yeah, and once you've blurred that boundary, like, oh, I can't this week because it's mocks. I can't this week because it's reports. I can't this week because we're redesigning the curriculum. Like, I can't this week because I've got my appraisal. I can't this week because actually I'm leading whole school CPD. And that's extra on top of and it's just that where once you allow work to come in for, a certain thing, it then becomes even harder because it's like, well, if I stopped my life for my mocks, but I'm not stopping my life for this, then that means that this is more important than this. And, it's all work, work, work and not me, and how to give time to me so that actually I can keep doing those things. Um,
Mm.
and you just hear it as a justification of, that's kind of what you've signed up to. You've decided to be a teacher, so there's all this extra work, and it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes this excuse that, well, we can definitely give you more because that's part of being a teacher. And it's just not okay for part of being a teacher means that every waking hour is, or every ounce of energy that you've got is directed into to school. And it gives that blank check to, school leaders to not necessarily think as thoughtfully as they possibly could about, when is this deadline, what is important, can we remove something in order to prioritize something else. And if we were really thinking about protecting teachers' time in that way, then it gives space for leadership to look different and for the job to look different. But just saying, oh, it's a vocation, that's you can make any decision because the teacher's gonna get it done.
Yeah. What would you say then to a teacher, not necessarily in leadership, but a teacher who might be struggling with this idea of, oh, it's just my job, it's just how I see my life. What would you suggest as something they could do?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I definitely sat down at different times with people that I was line managing, and we looked at their schedule and what are your non-negotiables. For one of them, that it was that they wanted to go to dance class, so what night's that, and we'll go and do that. For someone else, it was just that they wanted to have time to go to the cinema or go out for dinner, or and it was like, what night are we protecting, or what couple of nights are we protecting? But even then, when I look back at that time, that worked. But in my head, I was still in that belief system of of not really realizing that I was part of the problem of that. That I was still at that time, although trying to support their well-being, also battling in that ground of it's the lifestyle. So are you going to give up every weekend to actually, not do any work? I'm still questioning that at that time. But I think what's really clear to me now is, your well-being is always your own responsibility to an extent. So what is it that you really, really need to make sure you have time for that is for you or also for your family, and then for your job? And it's not necessarily as simple as going, I'm never going to work outside of work hours. It would be great if it was. But the start point is, how can you put a couple of sessions a week that are yours and protected in that way. I
Yeah.
think the other thing I would do now is really look at the school I was in, or where I was moving, and what is it that that organisation is doing to help me support my well-being. And again, I think it was the Edu Support survey that said 55% of school staff say their organisation is having a negative impact on their well-being. So it's really, there are great schools out there. How do we look for those? How do we identify with them? How do we recognise if ours isn't? One of the big things for me there is deadlines. Look at when the data deadline or the report deadline or the um, job advert deadline is. If those deadlines for huge pieces of work are right after your half term, that is a clear message that you are expected to work your holidays. That is a really good test of where is that deadline and what is that saying about that school.
Mm.
Um, and that's really hard for senior leaders as well, because once you sign that senior leader contract, it's dedicating. I will do what the school requires of me. So, what is the culture that those leaders are setting? Do you ever see them leave early?
Mm,
And those kind of things. So watch what the leaders do. Are they setting an example that they care about their own well-being, or do you know that they never sleep and run on empty? Because that's what leadership looks like to them. So that's what they're going to expect of you.
mm. I think the things that, whilst you're speaking, have come up then for me, it's that thing of boundaries again. Um, but it's difficult. I think it's very easy to say, know your boundaries, find your boundaries. It's really difficult where you might be the only one in that environment who's confident enough to say, I am leaving at whatever time, or I am doing my dance class every week. So it's quite difficult, isn't it, when you might be the only one, or also when you might want to change something, you might want to start something. It's very difficult to start and go into something that you're not familiar with. So it's about, for me, I think it's being aware of the boundaries, but it's also having the confidence and network within where you're working in order to get there. And I think that also links to what you're saying as well, like the culture, the mental health and well-being culture, but also morale. I think if the work environment that you are in every day has a good supportive group of people, morale is high, it's going to be easier to feel confident to talk to someone. It's going to be easier to sit down and discuss, setting a new goal or a challenge or your boundaries. So they're all really intertwined,
Yeah.
but it's difficult to know where to start. So I think you're absolutely right. Look at where you are, your environment. If it's not feeling quite right, like you said, there's hundreds of other environments that are, or maybe your environment is exactly where you need to be. It's just you need to have the confidence that it's all kind of intertwined, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that for me is, I think we talked last time, like your colleagues are incredible, amazing, people. And if you say like, I need your help because, I'm not looking after myself, I'm not able to keep going at this rate, I want to put something in, you know, but I'm worried about being the first person to leave, or you know
Mm,
like who's going to walk out with you, where's your ally, where's your comrade, where's the, because if you're explaining that why of this is so I can keep going, this is so I can give my best, this is so I can be present with my friends or my family, this is because actually I value myself enough to live essentially outside of just being a teacher. If you're giving that why, there's someone in that school that is going to support you and go, yeah, I'll walk out with you. Actually, I'd really like to get home in time to walk my dog, or pick my children up, or whatever it is. And so yeah, sometimes you do need that
mm.
ally to help you. Or I think we talked again, the difficulty in holding ourselves to account. So who's our accountability buddy that help me protect my well-being for this, and I will do it for you.
And also just something that you said about values, it's because it's part of the job, it's really easy to forget the things that make you you and the things that you value, because you get so bogged down in what makes, you're now, this is your life, this is your job. So it's very easy to forget, actually, no, I am someone who likes art and culture. I am someone who needs whatever it is you need. So sometimes also you just need time for yourself to just take a step back and reassess, what is it that makes you you and what are your values? Because once you've got them, then it's easier to stand up and say, actually, because of this, I am going to go and do this. And like you said, Steph, there could be someone sat across from you in the staff room who is thinking the same thing but doesn't have the confidence to do it. And as soon as you start saying, this is what I'm going to do and why, the domino effect is so much
Yeah,
more likely to happen. And ultimately, we're not saying this because we want people to leave teaching. We're saying this so that teachers can have a sense of their self again.
yeah, yeah. And it's absolutely, there'll be some teachers that listen to us and go, you know what, it's my time, and maybe that's a conversation for a different um episode, I guess. But equally, if this is a space to go, I really want to stay in teaching. And actually, the more people I talk to that have had a longer, those longer careers in education, having those boundaries makes a huge impact. They're often the ones that actually have their lunch, that leave at a certain time, that don't work at home, or do work at home but only, for certain tasks. They have that clarity of boundary, and they choose to work in places that support that, in like email policies about, the teacher will get back to you within 3 working days, or so removing that expectation that a teacher is always at the beck and call of the parent, the carer, the
Mm.
whoever. So there's a huge amount of work about, are you choosing to work somewhere that is supporting you, and enabling you to be, all elements of yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave that first one. So Steph's on a mission to remove remove the label of it's a vocation. It's, what would you change it to, Steph?
It's just a great job.
Just a great job, and I can
It's a
still
great job.
have time.
Yeah, it's just a great job. And I am both Ms. or Mr. whoever, and I'm also, Steph.
Yeah, perfect. So shall we introduce our next idea, which was the impact. It's a kind of catch-22, right? It's the impact of teachers being caring. We are those kind of people who care. We go into these jobs because we care. But unfortunately, that does sometimes, quite often, have a negative impact, not necessarily on the kids, but on ourselves. So do you want to say anything about that, Steph?
Yeah, I think again, this one is that, it's so connected to the previous one. It's connected to everything as a teacher, that desire to serve. You want to make a difference in a young person's life. And it shows people that who choose the serving professions, so like teaching, like the third sector and charity work, like the NHS and those professions, that you are increased likelihood to have occupational burnout, because the cause, oh, it's the greater good, the cause, the mission is bigger than yourself. And actually, it's shifting that mindset that in my own life, there is nothing that is bigger than myself, and to live, um, you know, Brené Brown says, wholehearted living is about engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. And we give all our worth to the job. And it's like, no, actually, our worth, we need to rejuvenate, we need to, protect ourselves so we can give our some of our worth to our job, but not all of it. So that's my stance on it.
Yeah.
I know you're really passionate about the impact of care, and especially, I imagine, from a primary perspective, like it's a whole different, viewpoint when they're so small, I imagine.
I
So
know.
I'm really intrigued
I
to
mean,
hear yours.
yeah, I mean, they're very cute, right? So you can just naturally have that kind of, but no, the thing, yeah, I mean, a lot of my time with these children is often more time than they spend with their parents. With primary, you have the same children every day, all day. So you really get to know them. You get to know their families. You bond with, their parents, that you might have taught their siblings. And yeah, you're with them the whole time. So you do have this, I mean, look, we have a duty of care, right? But it more times than not doesn't leave when I leave school. That kind of empathy, that care, that thought of someone that's told me something, they might disclose something, that's going home and they're not going to have dinner. It's those kind of situations where you can't just turn off that switch of not caring. And again, it's that finding that balance between, it's okay to go home and be upset and sad about something that might have happened, like doctors, care staff, we all kind of have those professions where you do naturally care, but it's also having that clear, again, boundary really on like, I care about these children's progress and I care about what they're going to go and do with me as their teacher, but I can't laminate another resource because it's 10 p.m. and I care about the outcome of the lesson, but I can't care that much anymore because I'm going to burn out. So it's that thing of like, you can't help but care for many, many reasons, but you also need to be able to take a step back and say, if I don't make these lesson plans perfect, if I don't mark their books perfectly in my best handwriting, does it matter? And I used to really care about that kind of thing. I don't know if you were the same when you first started teaching. You know, I would write lots of nice messages in their books. I would make sure my resources were completely like fresh and new. And but after a while, it's tiring. So I don't know if you were the same with that care. Obviously, I cared the same, but I think I put in less effort into lessons because I couldn't sustain that level of wanting everything to be perfect.
I don't think I ever laminated anything in my life, so can't necessarily connect on that one. But yeah,
I guess it's different for
but
primary.
the coach in me is actually, really desperate to challenge that as a question, because it's like, did you actually put less in, or actually was it just that you were, experienced to a point where that sense of, oh, I'm going in and I'm winging this, or I've done less. Well, no, actually you're not, because you're resourced just
Yeah.
internally with how much you know how to deliver this lesson, this curriculum, how you know how to, teach and recognize that learning is happening. Just because it doesn't look, shiny, doesn't mean that you're not prepared. And that's another thing about this. What does care look like? And we want it to be measurable, and we want it to be, something that I can prove. But actually, your huge amount of teaching experience will have meant that those learners from day one to day, actually, where you thought you were putting more effort in, you probably actually weren't the best teacher. You were probably the better teacher, towards that end, where, or you're relying on your experience.
Yeah. No, do you know what? It's a really good point. I think it felt as though I was putting in less effort, but you're right. You know, I built lots more experience, but I think the trouble was, which again goes against my kind of my perfectionism, but also my wanting for the lessons to be perfect because I really do genuinely care, against having more responsibility and leadership and actually not feeling like I could put in the effort. And I think that's where I started to question, am I caring less?
Yeah,
Do I care more about certain things? But again, that kind of goes back into boundaries and time management. Um, but no, you're absolutely right. You know, my effort of laminating, which you need to get a laminator. Best things
I
ever.
do not. I do.
Not anymore, you do.
Yeah. It's sustainability for the planet.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, you're bringing up a lot of thoughts for me here, because that, absolutely, it's very different at secondary, in terms of you don't have that same class, but you absolutely, do care on this, humongous scale of, um, 30 new learners every, hour, and but how you show that care as well. Are you stood on your door, welcoming them? Have you learnt their names? Those things matter. And that, it's that connection as well. It's not just the learning, it's that emotional intelligence, it's that holistic overview. And then as you move into, middle leadership, or you get your first trainee, that's when this care, because then it's like, oh, I've got the responsibility of other people's careers as well. And it really does, connect. And certainly as a middle leader, I just felt my care and time and energy, everybody else had a right to it. and there was no care for myself. Some days it was just like eating um cereal bar after cereal bar after cereal bar just to have enough energy to keep going into the next thing. There's no nutritional value there. It's not doing me any good. It's spiking my blood sugar, and then I'm awake in the middle of the night because my blood sugar is like, what the heck has gone on? And it's this vicious circle of I care about that mission of that school to raise that educational experience. This is where I can absolutely get on my northern high horse and just say, like, being from the north, and that it's really, you're empowering them because you care, because you want them to have the same opportunity as other parts of the UK. You want to go, what, you've got your northern accent, and be proud of that northern accent and get it everywhere, and you're absolutely motivational and you believe every single word you say, and then you come home and you don't live it. And that is the biggest difference for my life now to my life as a teacher. I care exactly the same amount. I'm looking for places I can serve, I'm looking for people's lives I can make a difference to, but I'm doing it from a place of being well, and
Yeah.
it is so much more enjoyable.
And you're having
And
probably a better impact because you have the capacity.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And there's elements of time where I did manage this reasonably well at times in my experience, but I just wish that I'd known now then what I know now, because there are things, there are signs that I could have taken that would have helped me continue to be able to care, or continue to do more, or just lead a better example.
Mm.
And I wish there were people around me that could have gone, Steph, you seem really tired, or Steph, you're reacting different, or Steph, like, or show that care to me, like, we, you've given us all this, so, actually, go home early, go and
Yeah.
have a sleep, take a sick day. You know, you're not yourself. But I think the normalization of people being overtired, the normalization of everybody being in survival mode, how do you notice that in your colleague? You don't, because it's normal for them. It's normal for you. It goes back to it's the vocation.
Yeah.
This workforce vocation of teachers being zombies. Like, no, they're
I
they're
suppose,
not.
yeah, and I suppose as you're saying that, like, what could we advise or what could we say to people? Because it is that thing of you care so much about your job, so you end up putting in so much effort that you then are not caring for yourself. And it's just this cycle of just kind of vicious cycle that keeps going and going. So, and also you touched upon how can you tell if you're in an environment and everyone's in this cycle. I'm wondering whether check-ins, staff well-being, yeah, meetings, check-ins, just how often do you ever, like in reflection, how often did you ever have opportunities to just have a well-being check-in with people who you work with? You literally walk past people in a corridor, you're off to your class, you're off. No one ever has the time. No one ever has the time. This is another thing.
Yeah,
We all have time that we are able to manage. It's how we manage it. So maybe one thing that needs to happen is putting it into the timetable or putting it into a day or a week or whatever to just check in, how are you doing? And you're right. It's really hard to tell if someone isn't caring for themselves if you're not either.
yeah.
I'm just wondering what else might come up, what else is coming up for you that might help this.
Yeah, I think when you say that, again, it comes back to the culture of where you work, because there are places where I would have been scared to say I'm struggling.
Mm.
One, if I'd have managed to recognize it, but I'm scared to say I'm struggling because that says I can't do my job. When actually, of course, it doesn't. It just says that I'm tired. Like, if
Mm.
if your phone battery has gone into the red, you don't think my phone doesn't work anymore and I need to get a new phone. Like, that phone's not good enough. And that's the mindset you have as a leader, going, actually, or a teacher, I'm struggling with this. They're going to think I can't do my job. Well, of
Mm.
course I can do my job.
Yeah.
I need a recharge and I need some support. Give me the plug, lend me your cords, like so I can go and just recharge. And essentially that's the way we need to look at it. I think well-being needs to be, brought into schools and training and recognizing the signs. Absolutely, but it's so hard to get that balance right because if if you're bringing those into the timetable, you have to take something out because otherwise the work that isn't being done in that well-being time just goes home. So then actually it becomes counterintuitive. So again, that workplace culture is really important.
Mm.
But the start point, I think, of what I would do is, that self-awareness is your superpower. What are you telling yourself that is sort of justifying, why you are valuing everything else and not that care for yourself. For me, it was about sleep. I absolutely convinced myself that I didn't need, very much sleep. And that was the most sort of humongous lie I've ever told myself, I think, because, I sleep so much better now and I feel so much better because of it. And towards the end of my teaching career, I was working really hard um, around that. But that self awareness of what makes you feel well, how do you know when you're not feeling well? You need to learn to recognize those signs yourself. And then the next stage is maybe, who can you trust to share that with that can, help you out? If they're noticing it because, you're not. Um, but yeah, I think that's my biggest question is, you need to be aware as a teacher in a profession built around care that you are actually more likely to have occupational burnout. So, what are the signs for yourself that you are burning out, and what are the individual things that suit you? Because your well-being plan and there will be totally different to mine. I cannot run anywhere near as far as you can.
You can't yet.
I don't want to. I don't want to.
But something that's come up for me as you're saying that is it's also just being able to recognize that what you are doing is enough and you can go above and beyond, but you can't forever. So choose what areas or what projects or whatever it is you might want to put more effort into, but allow yourself time not to for everything. I think it, it's that idea of also for me, there is no perfect lesson, there is no perfect hour, there is no perfect day. So as long as you're doing the best you can to make it the best it can be, kind of let go of that idea of perfection,
Yeah,
put in effort, but you can't put in 100% effort all the time because there's just too much. The reality is there's too much to do. If you put in 100% of your effort all the time, you are going to burn out before it's Christmas holidays.
yeah,
So I think
yeah,
that's something that's I would just kind of consider advise to consider. Put in as much effort as you want to make it the best version of what it can be, but don't keep going for perfection every time because I think that's where you get, and I think that's what I learned. I think I wanted everything to be perfect, like with the laminating, like with marking and making everything beautiful. And actually, it was not the best use of my time, and it didn't mean that any lesson was more perfect than the other.
yeah. You're making me think of one of my best line managers who also had a Be Perfect driver, and he really had to work for himself, but also, helped me with, what is good enough.
And what are
Um,
you happy with that is good enough? And actually, you're absolutely right. It's because it's still going to be better than no lesson at all.
yeah, yeah. And just showing up, being a well-regulated adult has huge impact on people's lives, and yeah, there's so much more to teaching than that, but actually that's a really important skill that's often underestimated. So with that in mind, I think we should introduce our third one, which we've put under the bracket of teacher guilt, and I'm going to throw it over to you to introduce us to it.
I feel like teacher guilt is just a thing that teachers just are like, oh yes, the teacher guilt. It's that thing of you feel so guilty if you don't go in. So you just go in, even if you're not feeling well. I mean, I would say about 80% of my academic year would be me not feeling well. Like not
Wow.
100, I wouldn't feel 100%. I'd have a blocked nose, I'd have a sore throat, I'd be a bit achy. But unless I was could not move, I would go in. And now I think, why? What is it about that teacher guilt that makes you feel like you have to go in? I know it's a lot of work preparing for a supply teacher if you're not in and you're not feeling well, and then you come back and the lesson's not done how you would like it and you have to redo certain things. But at the end of the day, does that matter? What is it about that guilt that you feel as a teacher you just have to, you feel too bad if you're not there? So you just go in and you're just ill all the time. You're not eating properly, like you were saying, Steph, you're not sleeping properly. If you had someone saying to you, I don't feel well, I don't want to come in, you'd say, okay. But yet we just couldn't ever, I mean, personally, from my experience, I'd feel too bad. I'd feel too guilty. So I just kept going in. I don't know if you're the same or have had experience with teachers who had said the same.
Yeah, I think I worked on this actually during my career. But certainly for the first few years, the idea of having a sick day at all was, mortifying. And I came from a family, my dad worked, he wasn't a teacher, but, my dad never had a day off. And my sister was, is actually still very much like that. She fell down the stairs and we literally had to force her to have a day off while her like ankle was pointing in a weird direction, like, so that's family messaging as well as the teacher guilt on top of this. I did eventually have an FLT member who actually said, sometimes people just need a duvet day. And she was really revolutionized my idea of actually prioritizing yourself at times. And there are definitely other teachers that do not experience teacher guilt, and that is a whole other conversation probably. But yeah, a huge part of I am letting those children their education down. That one day that I might need it. That's 100 and however many lives affected, and you just like you just carry that, and then you're right on top of that. Especially as head of faculty, it'd be well, what if somebody's got something, or I've also got this scheduled in, or that somebody's got to run around putting all the paperwork in your classes. So then you're like, mornings are hard enough just looking after my class, but now somebody else is going to have to do that. So it's how many people am I impacting on? I should just go in. And I think it was 2017, I can't remember exactly, but I had this like massive like swelling on my neck, like it just sort of came up, and I just wouldn't take time off. So like my body was literally, it eventually went in the Easter holidays, which tells you everything, doesn't it? Like when I had time to rest, and I had to like have hospital appointments, see what it was. I thought this like, but I didn't dare just take a day off and rest because I think I was new into a head of faculty. Like it's just going to look like I can't do the job like already, and I've already had it a few weeks. So just carried on because you've got to prove yourself. You've got to do this, and everyone's relying on you. And those messages in your head about what does it say if I have time off, or who am I letting down?
Yeah.
And actually, like, yeah, it's not ideal to have a day off because you want to go and teach classes, but does it affect that whole child's development for the rest of their life because Miss Carlin didn't turn up one lesson like or 1 week or whatever it was? Like, of course it doesn't.
I think that's it, right? You get so worried about what the parents might think if you're not in, or the kids might think, where is Miss Yentis? Or the other staff members, your team you're leading. But at the end of the day, they don't care. If you're not well, you shouldn't really be going into work.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get so worried about what people are thinking, or you don't want it to look bad. You know, I was quite unwell when I was training to do my teaching, and it was kind of one week I would go in and I would be unwell, and then the next week again, and I kind of felt like,
Yeah.
oh, now they're not going to believe that I'm not well. But actually, it's like you're not well because you keep going in and making.
Yeah.
But something
And
really interesting for me, sorry, that also came up for me was physical illness is much easier to be able to see. But I had a really interesting conversation with a parent who didn't want to send their child in for a day because the child was feeling really anxious and they just needed to be at home for the day. And it really opened my eyes to that thing of, again, if we are anxious or we're feeling low or we're feeling overwhelmed, there's nothing, because it's only us who can tell you, can know how that feels. There's no, or it doesn't feel like there's an
yeah,
acceptance to be able to say, I just need a day off for my mental health, not just my physical health. And I think that's just once someone can understand that you are okay if you need even half a day just to go home and go and cry, or go and just feel how you're feeling and go for a walk and do something that is going to help you. I think that's quite an empowering place to be. But the problem is it's difficult because it's not a thing. It's not accepted. It's not. It's hard to tell if someone's, and look, teachers, we're not going to be taking these days because we're in a work environment where we actually care and we want to do best. But I do think you don't want someone to start thinking, oh, they took a day off then and they took a day off then. And I think that's why we
yeah.
go.
And that to me links to the, where we started with the judgment of someone leaving early. Is it in our heads? Does it matter if, because actually them judging probably says more about them than it does about you. Oh, I'm being judged for prioritizing my own health.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
enjoy that judgment. I'm going to go look after myself.
yeah,
And it's so much easier to say than do, but actually, that essentially is what we're talking about. How much do you value your health? And you get that image of no one's gravestone says, I wish I'd spent more time at work, and it is sort of that brutal in a way. Um,
mm,
but you have to look after yourself if you want to continue to serve, if you want to continue to care. And I think that's a really good point. What constitutes being ill enough for to not go to work, and that's a HR battleground actually, not the teacher one. Yourself, your boundary. And the other reframe, which I think is really important and really helped me, is actually as a teacher or a leader, you are setting that example of how well you value and care for yourself is a lesson that you are teaching.
mm,
So, I'm going in, and every child that sees me pushing through, or every teacher that sees me pushing through, feeling horrendous, that's the example that I'm setting. I'm setting an example of don't care for yourself and don't care for your own well-being. Well, that is exactly contrary to my beliefs about looking after yourself, creating, holistically well-rounded people. You're contradicting or for me, I was contradicting my own values when I set that example. And I think that really helped me, reframe it, because I want my staff to be well and look after themselves. And therefore, I have to demonstrate that. I want well-rounded individuals that I'm working with, and I have to demonstrate that. And ultimately, if I go to work ill, my whole department's going to be off next week because I'm going to give it them. So, like, it's it's so counterintuitive when you step back and look at it.
yeah, absolutely. And it's 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 you're only going to be the best version that you can be if you have had enough rest and you are recharged, like you were saying, I think that battery um, metaphor is such a good one because you're right. It's we just need recharging, and if you're going and going and going and going and getting more ill and more ill, it's going to be harder. The recharge is going to be longer. So it's finding those moments where actually it's so have the afternoon off if you're not feeling well, and you'll feel better for the next day.
Yeah, and I'm really hopeful with the messages sort of starting to come out with the new government about, schools being happy and having that sense of belonging and those kind of messages. There's more and more schools considering, flexible working or, what that could look like. I know a school locally that, allow PPA to be done at home in certain circumstances. There's a creative, innovative sort of energy slowly creeping in. And I hope that there are some, teachers and school leaders that listen to this and really, connect with the fact that we can actually make change.
Yeah, I think Steph, that's a really good place to end this that theme. I think you're right. There is so much scope for change. It doesn't have to be big change. It can just be, yeah, the energy saved by going into work to sit at home and still doing your work is massive. That thing of justifying, oh, I'm leaving at 4, but I've got my books with me, you know. So what if you do or you don't? If you're not feeling like you want to stay past 4:30 because you are not well, then don't.
Or because you value yourself.
Because you value yourself and you've got to go to the theatre, which starts at 5.
Yeah, yeah. Going for an Nando's.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So I think that's a great place to end. What do you think?
Yeah, and really enjoyed talking with you again and hope this adds value for somebody somewhere.